Today's learning target is I can use the commutative, associative, and identity properties to solve problems. Today we're going to be taking a look at three different mathematical properties. The goal today is to understand what each property does. You may not remember the specific name, but if you understand what the three different properties are, that's going to be the key. So let's start with the distributive property. Now we know from our lesson of doing order of operation, if we had this problem here, I would do the parentheses first. 4 plus 2 would give me 6, and then I would times that by 5, 6 times 5, and so I know this equals 30. However, there are going to be times where we come across problems where we can use the distributive property to solve a problem or to make it easier. So the distributive property says when I have a problem like this, okay, where it's 5 and I'm timesing it by, remember there's no sign here, so that means times, so I'm timesing it by 4 plus 2, okay? Instead of solving this first, I'm going to be taking 5, timesing it by this. So to do that, I like to show these little arrows. I can take 5 times 4 and add that to 5 times 2. And if I do that, I get this is 20 and this is 10, and if I add them together, I can see I get 30, which is the same thing I had when I did the order of operation. Here's another example of how the distributive property works. Here I have 4 times 6 plus 4 times 3. Another way I could write this would be 4 times 6, just with parentheses, plus, or and, 4 times 3. Remember, anytime you see a plus sign, that's just saying and. Okay? So, here I have 4 groups of 6 and 4 groups of 3. So another way to write that using the distributive property would be saying I have 4 groups of 6 plus 3. Okay? Because this says I have 4 groups of 6, which is what I have right here, and I have 4 groups of 3, which is what I have right there. The commutative property is very simple. What it just says is if I have either an addition or a subtraction problem, like 4 plus 6, the commutative property says I can flip those. It doesn't matter what order I solve them in, and I'm going to get the same answer. Okay, that's 10, and that's 10. And the same is going to be true for multiplication. 3 times 8 equals 24, just like 8 times 3 equals 24. So that's the commutative property of both addition and multiplication. Remember, however, the commutative property does not work for subtraction or division. The associative property is similar to the commutative property. The associative property says when I'm adding any 3 numbers, I can add them in any order and I'll get the same answer. So I could add 2 plus 3 and then add 4, or I could add 4 plus 2 and add 3, or I could do 3 plus 4 first and then add 2. And the same holds true for multiplication. I could multiply 3 numbers in any order. I could do 3 times 1 and then times it by 4, or 4 times 3 and times it by 1. Now here's where the associative property can help us out and make our lives simpler. Okay, if we have a problem like this, order of operation says we solve 6 times 25 first. But I know the associative property says if I'm timesing 3 numbers, I can times them in any order. So when I look at this, I know 4 times 25 is 100. And so that gives me 100 times 6, which gives me 600. Makes it a much easier problem to solve. The same thing works with addition, an addition problem here. So order of operation says I solve parentheses first, but I see it's 3 addition problems. So when I look at these 2 numbers, mentally I know I can solve those because I have 6 ones here and 4 ones here. 6 and 4 gives me 10. So if I'm solving this mentally, I know that this is going to be 40 and 10 is 50. And that's 60 right there. So mentally I can say 44 and 16 is 60 plus 23, and that gives me 83. We can use the different math properties to help us simplify algebraic expressions. let's say we had this problem right here where we're taking 12 plus m and then we're adding 4 to it. But I know that I can add in any order. So I could take this 12 and 4 would give me 16 plus m, and I've now simplified or made it simpler this expression. Let's say I had one like this. Okay, I'm taking 5 times r and timesing it by 10, and I know that I can multiply in any order. So I could take 10 times 5 would give me 50, and I have to times that by r. So that's a simplified expression.